Hey guys, and welcome to the first Beeline to Victory podcast. We're just going to get going here with basically a recap of Michigan football and a look ahead to next season. So we'll take a look at the schedule, how they played in each game. We'll analyze each game. We're going to go through the Outback Bowl. I actually have a guest analyst for that, what our expectations are, who we think is going to win the game. I'm going to talk a little about Shay Patterson, what I think about him, what I think they're going to do with him. And also the future of Jim Harbaugh, who I have another guest analyst on here for. So we'll go right into the games. Obviously, they had a 10-4 season. Not bad, but obviously had higher expectations, especially after this first win against Florida, which is just a completely dominating game. And for a Florida team that was ranked so high to begin the season, I think that's a good win. That's a good win. And then we go right into Cincinnati. And, I mean, Cincinnati's horrible. We dominated them. Air Force, that was a little too close, but that's another terrible team. At Purdue, that's a good win. That's a good win. The Purdue's a bowl team. They handled them pretty good. Obviously, Spate got hurt in that game. O'Korn replaced him. Then this is the gut puncher, the Michigan State game. Because if you looked ahead, you saw they had Penn State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. And if they were going to have a chance to make the playoff, they were only going to be able to lose one of those games. And people were kind of overlooking the Michigan State game, but they lost that game. That was just a horrible loss. Bounced back the next week. Indiana, a decent team. They beat them up. And Indiana made it a little closer at the end of the fourth quarter, and they ended up winning in overtime. So that was a decent win. Penn State, we don't even need to talk about that. Rutgers is terrible. Dominated them. Minnesota's awful. So is Maryland. In these last two games here, I mean, we just got overmatched by two teams that were just better than us. And I think that if we had played Ohio State with Wilton Spate or Brandon Peters or maybe even Shay Patterson, I think we would have beaten them. And I think if we had made a couple more plays in the Ohio State game, we definitely could have won that game. And even the Wisconsin game, too. I think we could have won that one, too. But let's look ahead to the Outback Bowl. And we take a look here, and we're going to bring in guest analyst Heath here to talk about the Outback Bowl. Heath, how we doing?
Well, I'm doing good, Chris. I feel that the Outback Bowl is better than Michigan could be. We could have seen them in the Pinstripe Bowl or the Holiday Bowl, which Michigan State is in. Chris, what's your opinion on the Michigan State situation?
Well, I think obviously we have an alternate opinion here in Heath. He doesn't know what he's talking about with Michigan, but I think this is so great that they got put in a better bowl than Michigan State, even though Michigan State had a better record. It just shows that Michigan State will always be the little brother, no matter what happens. No matter what happens, they're always the little brother. Now, Heath, let me ask you, looking ahead here, a lot of people are saying that it's going to depend on quarterback play for who's going to win this game. How do you think Brandon Peters will perform?
I think that is he the current one, or
he will be the current quarterback in that game.
Out of Ole Miss.
Quarterback in that game. Nope, that is Shay Patterson. Brandon Peters is our quarterback.
I think he was good against Ohio State. Couldn't get done against that defense.
He didn't play against Ohio State. John O'Korn plays against Ohio State.
Well, I think it's promising. Unless they get the guy out of Ole Miss, I feel like he would be starting for Michigan. Yeah,
well, the guy from Ole Miss, he comes next year, and they're really looking good. And I think this game is essential. It's going to be a good measurement for them against a good SEC team. It's a good bowl. So we'll see what happens. One last question, Heath. How do you think Jim Harbaugh is going to game plan against this South Carolina team?
I think he's going to try to outgun him and outrun him. Try to play a high-powered offense and try to tire up this South Carolina team.
Exactly. They got to be able to run the ball to beat them. Well, thanks, Heath.
No problem.
All right, now we take a look at Shay Patterson, and I think this situation is very interesting. He, obviously, a former 5-star recruit. He had a decent year this year. But not only this guy, they have 7 different people that they have that might want to come to Michigan next year. And this guy's just a headliner. If they get him and even a couple of those other transfers, they're going to be right up there in the Big Ten, and they're going to be right up there in the national discussion. I think next year, with how experienced they're going to be, they're going to have a big year, and they're going to have a chance to make the playoff, in my opinion, and they're going to have a great chance to go ahead and then win the Big Ten as well, even taking down teams like Ohio State and Michigan State, which are just better teams at this point. They'll have the same quarterback. Obviously, Ohio State probably starts Dwayne Haskins, and Michigan State will have Brian Lewerke. And Patterson's a better quarterback than Lewerke and Haskins. So this situation's interesting. I think Jim Harbaugh going down there to meet with them is essential, and we'll see what happens. All right, now we're going to bring in another analyst here, Nick, to go over the Jim Harbaugh situation. Nick, how we doing?
Good, yeah.
I'm great. Well, most people sticking with their guns. They stick with Jim Harbaugh. What do you think Michigan should do with him?
I think he's gonna step it up, or they gotta let him go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, I think they give him one more year. He's 1-5 against rivals. That's just unacceptable because, I mean, Michigan State's our little brother, and somehow he loses to them. Doesn't make sense to me. Even losing to Ohio State, those games they could have won. Nick,
He's gonna step it up in the recruiting department.
Yes, that's true. And this whole deal with Shay Patterson, going down there to see him at Ole Miss, and those other 7 transfers, that'll be a big moment for the program if they get any of those guys, especially Patterson.
Yes.
All right, Nick. One last question here. What do you think Harbaugh is going to do against South Carolina to game plan and try and win that game offensively?
I think that he's gonna try and stop them with their defense and just control the game because their offense isn't going to be able to put up enough points to.
I agree. They will have Brandon Peters, though.
So,
all right,
they've got to control the defensive side.
Let's get your score prediction for the Outback Bowl.
Score prediction? We'll go 21-10 Michigan.
Really? I'm saying 21-3 Michigan. I think to just control them on the line, offensively and defensively. Well, thanks, Nick. Well, that'll do it. Make sure to click the subscribe button, and thank you for watching.